Hello and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson. This is a place where Christian leaders and entrepreneurs are empowered to step into their greatness and fulfill their callings to the glory of God. If you're a professional, you're thinking, I want to start my own business. There's a business in me that's going to enlarge the kingdom of God and make a difference, and you're not sure how to get started? Go to www.errollawson.com now and download our free video on the 5 core abilities of highly effective Christian leaders. You're going to love today's episode. Hey, why don't you go back and check out our over 100 previous episodes and see which one meets your need for where you are right now in your leadership journey. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy today's episode, and God bless you. Hello and welcome again to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson. And our guest today is Lee Button. Lee is a ministry consultant, part of the Unstuck Group. The Unstuck Group is all about helping churches all around the world to get unstuck, in essence. Lee, based in the UK, has spent 6 years as Operations Director at New Community Lee's based in the UK and has spent 6 years as Operations Director at New Community Network and Pioneer Trust. With a business degree and 17 years of experience spanning corporate and third sector settings, he facilitates strategic thinking, service design, and digital transformation projects, helping organizations create their preferred future. Lee also delivers training, coaching, and serves on the leadership team of New Community Eastleigh in the UK. Lee, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great to have you, Lee, man. Lee, before we go into our interview, please fill in any gaps in your bio there for us, and then give us a glimpse into what you're up to in the world today.
Okay, so that bio sounds good. It's funny when you look back, like how much you pack in. But I think it is what you glean from being in different settings. I've never stayed in one job for a really long time, and I've been very blessed that I've been able to make some transitions in one aspect or another and explore a lot of different settings and environments based around kind of the business work that I delivered in transformation. So I did a lot of agency work, working with digital agencies.
Okay.
So that gave me experience looking at everything from motorsport and franchising through to mobile telecoms and all sorts of various in between as well. And I think that kind of breadth of knowledge and seeing how certain principles can be applied again and again and again, and where businesses in one sense, as well as churches and charities, get stuck in that kind of, how do we move this forward? Where's the gap? What do we need to bridge to actually be all we can be? And that's where I was, and that's kind of the light that went on for me, was having done that since graduating in like my early 20s and then getting into my late 30s, was how do I now transition what I've learned and picked up from all these different industries, and what underpins it? What's the underlying thing that I'm doing again and again? What's the core of who I am, and how do I do that to the best of my ability?
That's great.
So working out kind of like what I was doing that was unique for me.
So strategic thinking, service design, and digital transformation projects. When I think of churches having this kind of input, this kind of conversation around strategic thinking, service design, and digital transformation, I think it's so important. How did you get to that place of recognizing that this would be valuable for churches to have this kind of support and the consultancy that you do?
It was so in a lot of the work that I was doing with New Community, and the fact that they were already helping other churches and churches across their network, and in Pioneer as well as like the friendships and relationships you make, we're seeing that a lot of churches lead with a lot of heart, and they really structure after cause and people. And that is absolutely right. But you've also got to look at the context about where we are. You can't just pick up what one church is doing one place and transport wholly, almost the product of what they do, because it might not be exactly what's needed where you are.
Right.
So it was looking at, right, how do we break that down and get you to think more broadly, to actually look at the knock-on effect and the impact. And that's where it started. It was just those probing questions. Right. When I first came into it, coming from a corporate background, I asked those naive questions that you kind of get away with for a while until that point where they think you should know better by now. But I didn't stop. So I kept probing and asking, so why this and why that? Yeah. And tell me more about like how you came to that conclusion. And what I realized is that when you started to unpick that, that sometimes they were doing it because it had always been done. And you were like going, okay, so what if we to rethink about this? What if we thought about this now from, the people that are younger than us, from the people that are older than us? How do we get the right voices around the table that when you're examining this issue for your region and where your church is based, how could you have the greatest impact and really see people thrive in all that they do? And it won't be by doing the same thing again and again and again, expecting different results.
It's a big deal right now. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be listening right now, even who are in churches maybe, or they're leading churches and they're part of a leadership team, and they recognize that there's this bottleneck, perhaps lid, might I say. Sometimes, from generation to generation, there's this challenge, this resistance to change. And the younger ones in their 30s and below are saying, we want to see this happen, see that happen, do like this, do like that. But the older guys are reluctant to change. Two things really. How did you get into this, or how does someone who has maybe the same background as yourself, or they've got experience in leadership in a corporate or professional context, and they want to influence the church corporately or their own local church, where do they start is the first question. And then I want to find out as well, like sort of some of the challenges along the way, how with the resistance you met along the way, how you kind of tackled that.
I think the first one is don't expect it to happen quickly. I think the biggest learning for me was how to bring these kind of concepts gently, because it can be foreign, or people actually wholly accept that this is the way to do it, but then they really struggle on the implementation. Right. And so you've got this. So I draw it out that the strategy is like the top of the pyramid, and the strategy won't last forever. So we change the strategies, but then further down at the bottom is the culture. It's the people, and down one side of that you've got to cast the vision, and then the other way up is that those people then execute on that and deliver the strategy. But that gap in the middle is, there's a gap of execution, there's a gap of innovation, and that's where people mostly, in my experience, get stuck. It's not a lack of strategy, and it's not a lack of people. It's a lack of executing on the strategy, because
why are people not executing? Visionary leaders, passionate leaders, why are they not executing?
I think sometimes it can look tiring, and that means that they're not properly equipped. So you've got a culture. Changing culture is slower than changing strategy. Right. So the strategies change really rapidly, and you might need to, a change in law, a change in governance, a change in direction, or something happens that you sometimes out of your control. Very difficult then to shift the culture underneath to accept that and get the momentum. So the thing is, from day one, even if you're not going to make a change straight away, start building in that sense that we want people to be moving, we want people to have momentum, and that we want them to be progressing and understand why we journey and why we want to improve, why we want to be better. Then the day when you come and say, right, we're now going to make a change, everyone's like, well, we're ready. And I noticed that the thing is that we weren't preparing the people, and till we had something to do.
Right.
And then you're delayed in how you can proceed.
Right.
Then you've got to go and build everybody up to deliver. By which point your strategy might need to change.
Okay.
So it's you've got to build it in to like the actual fabric down at that bottom.
So you've got to journey with the people from the very beginning. Keep on
From
that journey.
the very, very beginning.
Right.
Build that in, that there's a sense that actually, hey, we're a people that are going to move, we're going to do stuff, we're going to carry momentum, and I'm different to how I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'm going to have learned something, read something, met someone, done something. Little change and often is easier than trying to make huge change every once in a while. So build it in that there's going to be small and incremental changes regularly, and then people are happy with that process.
What about when you get a minister or leader who's resistant to change? Like totally doesn't want to. They might say they do, but in reality,
I think you have to, when it comes down to kind of the individual coaching, especially more at that senior level and senior team, you've really got to bring it back as to what factors and blockers are in that person's life, in their domain, that could be affecting that. Do they have past hurt? Is there what brings about a fear of change? Is it stuff in their own identity? And what you often see is that there's a few things that need to be unpicked where it didn't go well once before. And let's be honest, we don't do a great job of celebrating failure in terms of actually it was a learning outcome and we failed forwards.
Yeah.
So some people, they get bitten by it, and then they're like, well, I'm not going to try and implement change again because it didn't go well last time.
Right,
it's like, okay, but what did you learn from that? What would you do differently?
Yeah.
What things are you looking at in that process that we could pick up and strengthen your position this time, that you can have confidence taking this forward? It's a confidence thing mostly, and if they talk about it confidently and tell a really good story about why, everyone will buy in and be wanting to be part of the solution, want to be part of the change.
Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation, introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
So Lee, what can someone who's maybe they're a middle leader or manager, not in that senior leadership team, but they recognize these things need to be happening, how might they go about introducing that to the senior leader or leadership team?
Start small scale. Start with yourself. Start with something that you're doing and begin to evidence it. The more you live it out and then talk about it and then build your own story around it, the easier it is to tell. And then it becomes contagious. People will see that little change, and the next thing you've got that snowball effect. So you've got to start. If you're in that middle tier, let's say you're looking after some kind of department or some ministry piece. Let's say it's, I don't know, like tech team or the worship team or something to do with kids. Just bring something in that's different and show how you introduced it and why, and then how you made it habit and how you made it stick. And then start to evidence it. And then the next time you come in for some level of appraisal, or you're meeting with one of the people more senior, tell them, like, hey, have you seen what we're doing in this team? Trust me, once you start going with that, people will notice anyway, because it, just bring the joy to it, show how you're celebrating movement, whether it succeeds or fails, but how you're celebrating the attempt and the individual and everything that they bring. And you'll start to seriously grow team, and bring people forward who understand that they're not going to be punished for trying.
Yeah.
But that actually all of it is part of taking things forward and the learning outcome, and we begin to celebrate the wholeness of what that is. I think that's the most important thing you can do. That kind of, if you're second chair, if you are in that middle group, once you've gone from being an outsider and you're somebody's peer, you have a responsibility to move up to mentoring. So find people you can share what you're doing with. Look outside of your own environment. It's easy these days to find other groups to get involved with and other people to network with at those levels. So just, put yourself out and take a risk. And, you'll go at it, and some will work and some won't, but give it a go. Give it a go.
So what's been your biggest challenge so far in your leadership journey?
Getting out of the way.
Okay.
I think that's the one. If you're facilitating, and if you naturally operate more up at an ideas end, where you can just think and come up with ideas and opportunity time and time again. Remember, when you are working with groups of people, that I don't want them all to act on the stuff that I come up with. My job is to actually create an environment where they can be all they can be. So, and leadership is facilitation and creating the right environment, which means I also have to get out of the way. I don't want them to act on everything that I come up with, because some of that is for me to go and do, and some of it is just to literally just be put down. Like, I can come up with 10 ideas. Not all of them are good ideas. Don't go and do it because you're the leader. You want it to be that they will go and they will learn how, the values of exploring, the values of kind of like movement and momentum, and that value of coaching and mentoring above and below and across their peer network. So creating the right environment and learning how to get out of the way has been the biggest thing for me. It's how to get yourself out of the way, not cause a bottleneck.
Great.
And how to pass that on and let others to flourish.
Awesome. So we've got this section we call the 5 core abilities section. From interviewing over 100 leaders now from around the world, we've written a book called the 5 core abilities of highly effective leaders, which comes out soon. Quick plug there. We'll say more about that in future episodes.
Excellent.
But what we recognize that there is 5 abilities that leaders have who are highly effective. And the first one is to be able to create and communicate a compelling vision. So my first question in this section, Lee, is how have you created and communicated your vision for your business or for your ministry? What was the process?
So in principle, even for what I do as a business, I've got stuff going on with the guys at Unstuck. My company is called Venture 52, and we facilitate charities and corporate entities as well, in different ways, as well as what we've done as church. What I've found is that the process hasn't changed. We've internally been able to articulate some level of mission, the what's wrong with the world and how we intend to fix it. But we've been using that totally as an internal document. We haven't put that or advertised it or put it out. That's for our guys internally. Then what we've done is we've looked at our vision, which is how will things look when we achieve it? What will the world look like when we're done? But then the bit to create the communication strategy, we've done a round of, okay, so to get there, what do we value? And we've come up with core values, and all of our communication has been around the value, so that somebody external to us and people internal to us, what we're saying is this is what we value. They are quite at one level they're quite common, although we will have more detail behind them. But then we look at what they've got going on, and we cast against the vision, the value exchange. So it's like, what have you got in your life? What have we got in ours? Where do we exchange on this? And how do we now cast something that would say to you, hey, we exchange on this level. Maybe you're tied into helping achieve our vision. And so we've done it based around values and working with individuals. So as a church, as our church at what is New Community Eastleigh, and actually we are relaunching out into our own entity called Thrive Church, because we believe that people shouldn't just survive, it's about thriving. We have done it based on creativity, wholeness, generosity, and movement. And people external to us can value those. But when it comes to us saying what the world will look like when we get there, we are casting against those values and creating a value exchange with the individuals, which is really, really simple and very palatable, not off-putting, and is can be repeated easily. And I think that's it. It has to be catchy. We have to say it again and again. And so every time we talk, if it's a notice, if it's a message, if it's written communications, we try to get our values threaded in there again and again and again, so that it literally runs through the whole of everything that we do. And we've been working at this now for about 12 months. And we would say that everybody understands it, and people would say that they are for it, even if they're not, 100% in yet. They still get the overarching message.
It sounds quite complex, right? I know it's a process.
Yeah.
You've got this is for your congregation, this is for the church, or this is for your business?
We've done that with the congregation. I actually did some stuff with a guy looking at this for myself personally, about what do I value and how do I deliver who I am, and I've used that in the business as well. So as a business, for what I was creating as Venture 52 in terms of doing facilitation and working with different organizations, it was that we value simplicity, we value a good work ethic, we value beauty. And so actually those things that we started to value, we talk to people on that. It's actually we want to create a preferred future. Yeah. We want to move to it. So we're going to do that by creating some beauty, but it will require hard work. But we're going to do it, simply. We're going to talk about this in terms of what we can break it down to into its
our values.
Yeah, into its smaller parts. We'll make it palatable. So that we try to remove as many barriers as possible in all the levels of communication.
Good. Awesome. All right. So the second core ability is your ability to manage and create wealth.
Yeah.
How did you earn your first pound in business?
So in business, this was, I think there's part of it where you do what you do, and then there is always that moment where you go, that was surprising. I didn't expect that call. And I'd had a really chance encounter with a solicitor that I did some work with. Okay. And out of that conversation, they were speaking to somebody else and said, I've met this guy and I think he could fix what you guys are talking about. I think he could help you answer the problem that you are seeing. And so I got this call in from a charity as a result, and they said, would you come and meet with us? And I got to go down, and just basically my whole job was reassuring them and saying, we can fix this, and being inclusive. And by being inclusive and developing the relationship, they took me on and paid me to come and help facilitate the processes that they were in. Wow. So for me, how did I make my first dollar? Relationally. That's great. It was by relationship, and just by being who I am. And I don't mean that in that arrogant sense. I didn't try to dress it up. I just went in and very simply did me.
That's great, man. Love it, Lee. And what's your number one? The next ability is about productivity. It's basically around your ability to focus on the key things and then either delegate or eliminate the rest.
Yeah.
What's your number one activity or process or app even that you have for increasing your productivity and level of focus?
I literally, so one, I'm tied to my phone like, most people. Yeah. In fact, I do most of my work and triage of email happens on my phone. So I'd say my phone as a device is the thing I always have. That really works well. But in terms of planning and mapping, So I like to look at overarching structure. I don't get too bogged down with detail. So I use Trello, and Trello is my go-to for managing projects, looking at coaching, working with churches, or even mapping out my week and my life. I use Trello for like everything. And if I get given a project or a task or a problem, my first go-to thought is, will it Trello? And that's how I start. And yeah, I've just been using that for a long time, and it really works for me.
And check out Trello online, guys, and in the App Store.
Yeah.
The next ability is the ability to get the best out of the people you lead, whether they're for you or not, as well. Because sometimes we've had leaders say how they've got teams that were challenging and they're difficult and all kinds of stuff going off, but they still had to work with them, especially in a church context. It's not easy to just, to move someone on that easy sometimes.
No.
So when it comes to building a team for a new business or a project, what process works best for you? And what have you tried in the past that maybe didn't work so well?
I think the one that works best, and this is the one that's most risky. So you do have to watch your own identity and your own security. Honesty. You've got to. It's like I said before. It's like I don't dress things up. I just try to be me. So even though I've got a church hat and a family hat and a work hat, I can't manage that as all the different entities. I can only be me once. So I'm kind of unapologetically me, and I got very comfortable with whether people would accept me or reject me based on that. So I just try to be authentic and honest, and I think that you find after that then even if people aren't with you or don't like it, but if you're being honest and authentic, they will respect you. So I would rather be open, but at the same time, that's being really honest and open about stuff makes you more vulnerable. But I would rather err on being a higher degree of vulnerability and risking a little every time I input into somebody than holding back and not giving them who I really am or being true to me.
What's not worked so well when you're starting out building a team? What's not worked so well?
I think one of the ones one team that I led a while back, one of the things I noticed after a while that wasn't working and we had to sit down and have like a chat about was we hadn't done a lot to look at how we interoperated together in who we were. So it became competitive, but not a good competitive. It was that kind of like one-upmanship. So everyone was trying to tear up on where we were going because we hadn't really got down to what our roles and responsibilities were clearly defined. So if somebody's got something that's going to take 6 months, but somebody else has got something that's going to take a week, both of them add the same amount of value because both things need doing. So we had to remove some of those constraints of, look, we can't have time in here as the only measure of whether we are successful. So what do we value as a team? What things will we celebrate? And that was the thing. So it's I think not doing stuff early enough to look at the differences in your team and address them, as well as like what's good about your team. So, even like there's really simple tools out there, get you guys to do some strengths finder, get your guys, just look, search for some other things that are similar, just some nice, simple benchmarking, or even if you've got it, somebody that would come in and just facilitate your team to just like help you look at it. One of the things that we do with Unstuck out of the Stratop process is looking at thinking wavelength and just sitting with a team and just getting people to like chart out how we actually look at stuff allows you to appreciate the similarities and the differences and to actually have something on the wall in front of you all that you can refer back to. So I think, we jumped too soon to doing without taking that time to kind of get to know one another. And that was my responsibility. I was leading that team. I should have done that.
It's great. And the fifth ability is about it's about the ability to defy self-doubt and lead with conviction. How do you maintain that confidence and not fall prey to the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is massive. And I tell you what, right? So, and the thing is, I think there's a key to one, if you recognize that in yourself and begin to understand and learn more about what imposter syndrome is, you're probably doing okay because you're self-aware.
Yeah.
So the thing I do is make yourself accountable, get with other people and network a lot. Network. Talk to people, get yourself where you think you might be out of your depth, and then suddenly finding that actually you did okay, you were paddling along all right. And it keeps you humble. Accept that there are things that you don't know and be open about it. And then it helps you stand strong on the things that you do know and be confident in it and assertive in it. So yeah, take a risk. Don't be afraid to speak up. Network. Just network and network. Get out there and meet people, and not always people from your discipline. Go and meet with a bunch of people in a topic that you know nothing about, so that you start to understand what tools and principles are at play and how you could harness that as well.
Awesome. Brilliant. All right, quick fire round, Lee. So, the question, what does the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
So this was a joke about Errol and I had just before this podcast started. I have 2 kids. The first 90 minutes of my day is never the same at the minute. I've got a 3-year-old and a 12-week-old. So I'm going to say, right, what I would like my first 90 minutes of the day look like. Really, I do try to get up at the same time every day. And then I have a pattern of thing. I eat well, we do breakfast well, we have some family time, we remember who we are before we embark on anything. I think that's it. We make it principle based again. Who are we? What are we doing? Let's share together before the day starts. That's the first 90 minutes of my physical day. But when you've got to get kids ready, when you're doing nursery, when you're about to do the runs and do that kind of thing, you kind of, when it comes down to then the first 90 minutes of my working day, the kind of more practical piece, I try not to open email. I look at my Trello board. I see what I've got. I stick it into some form of order. I write down a physical list. I unhook and try and tackle something that will add value and meaning to what I'm going to do for the rest of the day.
That's great.
That's it.
Awesome. And what other key habits have contributed towards your success?
Reading and learning. I think you've got to continually be reading. I know it's really cliche to say that leaders are readers, but it's true. But I think even more than that is that it's leaders are learning and continually learning and trying to look for new things. And these days there's podcasts, there's audio books, there's online stuff, there's actual books. There's so many different ways that you can do this. So the key habit: learn how to learn, and don't stop.
And what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
Admin. Yeah. I think you get into that sphere sometimes as a leader, and you can be about the ideas, and then you want to see it executed, and then it comes down to the fine detail. And that's the bit where I'm I know that it needs to be done, but something in me just kicks back, and I'm oh man, so yeah. For me, the biggest weakness: writing things down. That administrative side of it, getting things written down.
And your biggest strength as a leader?
Probably, I'd say growth mindset. Opportunity mindset, gearing myself to continually be looking at, okay, then if this is what's coming up, what can we take from this? What's the learning? So yeah, a growth mindset.
Great. And who have been your top 3 most significant mentors in your leadership journey?
So this one's a biggie, I tell you, because there's so many people, I think, after you've been around a while, that you realise a lot of what you've read and people that you physically meet, who's had a lot of impact. So there was a time about 4 or 5 years ago, I connected with a guy called John Staddington. At the time, he was running an outfit called 8-Bit, and he's he'd worked in churches, he's an entrepreneur, he's done so much cool stuff. I mean, he's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. He was one of the most significant guys. I met him, and he just really unhooked my thinking from a rut that I'd been in, and lifted my view of like myself and what I do to actually see it with a new perspective. So John Saddington is one. In church context, there's a guy called Tom Lane who's from a church called Gateway, and they're based out of Texas. Just seeing how they were intentional about using strategy in churches really helped shift and shape where I've gone since. And then, I think on a personal level, there's a friend of mine called Nick McDavid, and he's been, although it's more maybe more a peer relationship now than a mentor relationship, but he's a guy who's a little bit older than me. He's gone before me in a lot of things, and I've just seen how he's done a good, consistent, faithful walk in what he's done, and that has been incredibly encouraging. And there's just little prompts and accountability in there the whole time.
So let me just dig into those three relationships a little bit and ask, with John, with Tom and Nick, what's the most significant piece of advice they've each given you? So
with John, it was how to progress from being a peer to a mentor. And he just gave some real clues on that, like navigating this path of being outside a peer, mentor, trusted source. And that has really stuck with me as a path of like, am I an outsider in this? Am I a peer? Have I now got an opportunity to mentor in this? And at what point do I become the trusted source? And he really helped me evaluate that. For Tom, it was just recognizing that God is an architect. God is interested in the detail and the strategy. He's a master planner. And he can interrupt us, but there's still process to everything that he does. And to look for how we can see it as he would see it, that we can build a trellis that allows organic growth. That was the thing. And for Nick, it was the being consistent. He's one of the most grounded people I know. And I think out of that, it was just the sense of like, look, do this in a way that you would be able to, hand on heart, tell your kids about it, and that you would be always happy to tell them about it.
That's great. And what's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
Most fired up about right now, actually, where we're going as a church. I think the switch in identity from being New Community Eastleigh to being Thrive Church is this transition in recognition that the church has grown up, that we have actually cemented some identity that has meaning to the location that we're in. And we are seeing growth, we are seeing health, we are seeing movement, we are seeing generosity. That is people coming alive to who they are.
Whereabouts is it?
So Eastleigh is just outside Southampton, on the M3 between Southampton and Winchester.
Okay. There you go. Anyone living locally, go check out Thrive Church.
Yeah.
And Lee, how do we find out more about you? Like someone listening right now wants to get in touch with you. How do they connect with you? Do you have any social media handles you can share with us as well?
Yeah. Find me on Twitter. It's Lee Button, LEEBUTTON. Twitter's where I'm at. I honestly, you find it there. You'll find a lot of tweets about coffee and probably quite irrelevant things. But hook me in, give me a follow, send me a direct message. Twitter's where it's at. If you're that way inclined, I'm also on LinkedIn under the same handle. They're the big ones. That's where I'm at. That's where I do a lot of my following, and
awesome.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what I'm about. And you can find then links in my bio and stuff on Twitter and stuff if you want to see further where I'm doing stuff.
And what books should anyone read, Lee, who's got this passion that you have? They hear your heart and they see your passion for church transformation and for strategic leadership and development in churches. What books should they go and read?
Oh man, right. Actually, if you want to change how you look at stuff, and really move on. I've got one book. I've even pulled this off my shelf. It's this book. It's called The Art of Possibility.
Wow.
By Benjamin Zander and his wife, Rosamund Zander. This book was an absolute game changer. It doesn't specifically relate to strategy, doesn't specifically relate to church, but it's about the art of possibility, about changing perspective and looking at how we can bring it into play into every aspect of our life. Absolute superb book. Absolutely superb. I think there might even be a TED talk by these guys that's on the same thing. So brilliant. Yeah, check them out. Benjamin Zander and Rosamund Zander, The Art of Possibility.
Awesome. Lee, thank you so much for your time today, brother.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, we'll get this out and listen. Guys, go and check out Lee. Go and check out Lee online. If you Google the Unstuck group, you find out more about the Unstuck group there. If you check out Lee Button on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you can follow him there. Get in touch. And I'll be happy to have a chat with you and to connect with you and support you and your church or your organization in any way that you can. All right. Thank you so much, Lee, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Right, God bless you, man.
Bless you.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol at errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol at errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes, give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.